Let's talk about memory. We can think of memory as a pyramid, and the vast majority of your memory is procedural or non-implicit. You also have event memory, and a little bit of your memory is semantic. Most of a recurring theme in the PSIP model is the bottom-up approach. So let's start at the bottom of the pyramid. The majority of our memory is procedural or implicit in nature. It's the memory of processes, habits, skills. It's things like tying your shoes, knowing that a red light is stop and a green light is go without having to think about it, doing math, reading. It takes time and repetition to learn these skills, and it takes time and repetition to unlearn or to modify those skills. So procedural learning is the acquisition of processes, not so much information. And these processes can be motor, cognitive, or perceptual skills. They can be defense mechanisms or ways that we keep ourselves safe. And they can be ways that we think about phenomena or other people or just any kind of sequence of automatic behavior. Some procedural memories can be very simple, and others can be very elaborate. Next up, we have event memories. This category involves subjective events that meet some kind of internal threshold for being significant. So for instance, events that are dangerous or new, but also extraordinarily positive moments. This could be your first kiss or the birth of a child, and this could be scary or dangerous things like where were you on 9/11 or when President Kennedy was assassinated, or a more recent example, I guess, where were you when you first were told to stay home from school or work due to COVID? This is a event memory that's powerful. There's emotion to it. There's probably sensory motor or autonomic kind of responses that are associated with these kinds of memories. Finally, we have semantic memories. This is kind of the linear, explicit verbal memory. This is studying for an SAT test. If you ask me anything about The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, or Star Trek, I will give you hours of examples of semantic memory. These are facts that entered into my mind with no specific context, and they're just these verbal, explicit memories. The therapy work that we're going to be doing doesn't really focus so much on the semantic memories. We don't really look at these declarative or conscious memory structures. Instead, we're doing a bottom-up approach because that's where stress and trauma are stored. It's not so much the knowledge of trauma, it's the event of trauma or the procedures that I created as a result of that trauma. One of the really interesting things about thinking about memory in this way, with these three different categories, is that they don't actually have to connect to one another. I can have, as an example, procedural memories without event memories. I know how to read, that's procedural, but I don't have any specific memories of learning to read. Now, partly because that wasn't one event, that was a number of events over a course of months or years, I don't know. But also, I was very young, and I just didn't store memories in the same way that I do nowadays. And also because learning to read wasn't particularly memorable. It wasn't exciting or threatening or new. It was kind of boring, I imagine. So I can have a procedure, learning how to tie my shoes or learning that a loud noise is scary and dangerous. A sudden, unexpected bang, like from fireworks or a car backfiring or someone dropping books on the floor in the next room. I have a procedural memory that is scary, but I don't have to have an event or a semantic cognitive structure telling me why I'm doing that. It just kind of happens. You can have trauma and not have any event memories of that trauma. that are accessible to your conscious mind. As a therapist, it's very frustrating to me that I can see that a client has experienced trauma, but they don't have any memory of it. If they don't remember it happening, we can't really talk about it. So the semantic or conscious kind of cognitive memories aren't there. The event memories of trauma might be there, but they're not available to consciousness. And there certainly are procedural memories, that startle response, that hyper reactivity. Those are definitely there, but we can't really talk about them because these three different kinds of memories aren't always connected. Most talk therapy, it works with declarative memories, the top part of the pyramid, which is, again, the smallest part of the pyramid. So we can talk about events, narratives, cognitive biases. We can talk about communication skills and I statements for how to get along with family members. And that's really good. That's useful. I love doing that with people. But when it gets to stress and trauma, that kind of stuff tends to be stored in the non-declarative memory, which is most of the pyramid. It's most of our memory. And so that's just sudden overwhelming fear or hypervigilance or just a really deep-seated distrust of a certain person or a certain kind of person. There's no conscious reason why you have that reaction. You just do. And that's because that's all stored below conscious awareness in procedural and event memory. So if you find yourself, or if I, as the therapist, notice that you are having these kinds of intense, non-declarative reactions to things, we can't really talk about it. You didn't talk yourself into having that kind of a reaction, so you can't talk yourself out of having that kind of a reaction. Event memory includes these kinds of sensory motor impulses and these nervous system responses. So when an event memory is triggered, whether or not we have a conscious or semantic idea about that memory, but that event memory gets triggered, and so the sensations, the impulses, the body signals that were a part of that memory when it actually happened, they come back now in the present. The event memory could have been a week ago, could have been 40 years ago, but when your event memory comes back, it feels like it's happening right now in the present moment. The anxiety, the fear, the anger, it's all happening in the moment, in the body. So this is a nice pyramid, right? And it shows that what we are consciously aware of is a very small part of the whole structure. You can perhaps see why I've become so interested in somatic approaches to psychotherapy and trauma treatment over the last decade or so. Most of our memory, most of who we are, and most of how we react or respond to the world around us isn't available to our conscious mind. It's in the non-declarative memories of procedures and events. So you, the client, are coming to me, the therapist, to get help or to process something that neither of us can directly touch through talk. So what do we do? What do we do instead? Well, I'll tell you more about that in the next video.